I'd just like to respond to one or two comments that have been made about Dan Poulter. The first one is somebody has said here, UVS says, rat something ship. You're quite right. The rats are leaving the sinking ship. That's not, I think, a reference to the rats. It's a reference to the ship and to the state of the ship of state. And the ship is seriously damaged. I mentioned rats once before, and one or two comments got rather uppity about it. The image of the rats leaving the sinking ship is a reference to the quality of the ship. And James Clark says, I take a rather dim view of Mr. Poulter's action. Surely as a consultant psychiatrist, he still has much work to do in the Tory party, in the Conservative Party. I think he's done as much work as he possibly can do, and that is precisely the problem. This is not a self-seeking form of a desperate form to cling on, because he's made it clear that come the general election, he will not seek re-election. So this is a statement about his contempt for the present form of the Conservative Party. And I think as a statement, it's very noble and rather impressive, and better actually than almost everybody else who's crossed the floor in recent history. I think in recent history there hasn't been anyone who's crossed the floor who's not then hoped that they could stand for election with the other party. So I think I think it's a fine, dignified demonstration. It's almost a parable of action, and a parable in action. And as for, I mean, there's a number of comments about Meghan and Archie and the expected news from Buckingham Palace. I don't think that expected news is the fact the King is returning to work. I think there's something else which is being trailed through social media, something that the BBC knows and is forbidden from speaking out about because of an injunction. And we're supposed to learn about it within the next 2 or 3 days. As for Burlett says, what's the difference between a Tory MP and a post office executive? Well, a lot of Tory MPs are still trying to do their job, but they are being led by a series of puppets who have lost all direction. And Mitjitsu says, Dan doesn't sound any different from a run-of-the-mill Labour MP. Actually, he does. He is making a point, and it's a sort of kamikaze political action. He is this is much stronger than saying that he's going to be an independent. He is quitting his party, joining the opposite party to make a point. And as William Wilson says, a decent man, how he lasted so long as he did beats me. The NHS under this government has been reduced to the weakest public health system in Europe and unfit for purpose. The criminal justice system wants the envy of the world under this government, unfit for purpose. And you can go on. And I identify the problem in both as the bureaucracy, which is chaotic. And every time I interface with the bureaucracy in the NHS, I squeal at its bureaucracy. Somebody rather unkindly, I think Mandy somebody rather, asked me whether or not I received good cancer care. Well, yes, I did, but the bureaucracy messed up so badly that I was back in hospital within a week of coming out and being discharged because they hadn't taken care to give me the correct drugs to treat the haemophilia issue that I have, which was very clearly noted and which I clarified when I was being when I was being seen by the haematology department They were too arrogant and too led by economics to do the correct job, which meant in the end, I spent significantly more time in the hospital than I needed to. So, yeah, if somebody wants to make a cheap jibe, there we are. I'm not going to keep quiet about it. So, the NHS is in a mess. And it's certainly not the people who, the doctors and the nurses and the cleaners who are working incredibly hard, and the junior doctors particularly, who work ferociously and get paid less than the average dustman. I find it reprehensible and shocking, and yet at the same time, the twits in bureaucracy who get things wrong, and make these impulsive decisions that are not medically guided are paid buckets. Until we sort that out, the NHS is not going to thrive. And the same sort of thing is true of the criminal justice system. And in both cases, we should get away from this copy and paste rubbish with forms and actually fill out forms properly. Because the forms I've had back from both the legal system and from the NHS system have quite often got my gender wrong, as well as my address. And this is because of copying and pasting and not really paying very much attention. It's the only thing these bureaucrats have to do, and they get it wrong because they're casual, they're not interested, they're just raking in the money.